Welcome, everybody, into the first installment of the Starting Five. He's Coach Nick. I'm Ben. Glad to have you along with us today. And this is going to be a show where we take a look at the top five really most impactful stories of the week, Coach. And I think it's best said if we start with Derrick Rose. Recent news just came out today that he is going to have his right meniscus repaired. He had the two options. He could have had it removed. It would have been a shorter recovery time, but he instead is going with the longer surgery. He is likely out for the year. Give us your initial thoughts on what the Bulls and Derrick Rose's decision was.
Well, I'm not sure it was much of a decision as far as what they were going to do. I certainly repairing the meniscus is the right thing to do. Dwayne Wade was complaining earlier this year that by removing it in 2002, it shortened his career, and he's actually one of the few guys who's made it this far without having meniscus at all. So the repair is crucial. We are going to have a surgeon on coming up later today that's going to show some cutting-edge techniques they're using, and we'll have to find out if Derrick Rose actually used it. But what they do now is to repair the meniscus is so advanced that they can extend the career and make it like nothing ever happened to him.
That'll be good, and be sure to keep it tuned to B-Ball Breakdown for that conversation. Look, we've talked about this on our long-term podcast before. You need to think long-term if you're the Bulls and Derrick Rose about this decision. And, I said it on the show. The Pacers and the Heat, to me, were the two best teams coming into the league this year in the Eastern Conference. So if you're the Bulls, you were looking at next year, arguably is that year where you might be able to sign a max free agent, amnesty Boozer, bring Mirotic in, and really have a plan going forward. So I think this makes the most sense for them. And Rose was struggling so far this year. I mentioned Bloomberg Sports said that he was shooting 35.4%, which was lowest among point guards actively playing. And, the number will probably go up, but he was struggling. I think 2015, you get a really healthy Rose. He may not be the same guy, but I think he'll still be a very, very impactful player for the Bulls team next year.
I agree. I would suspect he'd be back to what he normally did. And even this year, I knew he was going to get back to, 43, 44% shooting, which isn't even that great. But if that were to happen, then they would move back into that conversation about competing for a title, perhaps, or certainly conference finals. But you're right. The way they were playing the day before he got injured was not indicative of a team that was going to make it a deep run in the playoffs. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do here. I don't think they're going to panic and blow the team up, but certainly now this might accelerate the notion of getting rid of Boozer if they can and trying to fill in a couple different holes.
Well, one caveat to the point, and then we'll move on to our next topic. If Luol Deng is not part of the team's long-term plans with Rose likely out for the year, you got to consider trading him at this point, don't you?
Absolutely. I mean, you don't want to let him go for nothing, and they already have Jimmy Butler coming on who can be a cheaper version of him. And quite frankly, I don't think that Luol Deng, who I love, is never going to be quite worth what the market's going to pay for him. And that's
right.
Probably what the Bulls are thinking right now. So they would be better off, I think, rather than pay him what the market would to try and keep him and let him walk without getting anything, absolutely try and trade him now that he's playing pretty well.
Yeah, it's the 10th year in the league, and he's almost logged about 23,000 minutes so far. So a lot of mileage on that body for Luol Deng. But Derrick Rose wasn't the only guy that was impacted on sort of a Black Friday of injuries. You had Andre Iguodala with a hamstring strain. The Grizzlies lost Marc Gasol with a grade 2 medial collateral ligament strain in his left knee. The good news is that for Iguodala, it's not going to require any surgery, and neither will be the case for Gasol. But can both of these teams hang on with Gasol and Iguodala out for the foreseeable future?
Well, I think that the Warriors certainly can because they shoot so well that's going to keep them in games. They're playing a little bit better defense, and so that should be able to keep them. And, on any given night in the NBA, you're going to play a team that's not that great, right? I mean, invariably, there's so many different teams out there. So I think they're going to be okay. I think that'll give, obviously, Harrison Barnes another great shot to get even more minutes and really develop, who I think, like I've said before, I think he will be the best player on that team in a couple of years.
Yeah, you're big
now,
Harrison.
The Grizzlies are going to suffer because they already weren't playing well. They're up and down, and they were able to start competing, but you're talking about one of the best centers in the league defensively and offensively. A huge thing what they do for passing on their offense, and they're already struggling with their offense anyway. So it's a big issue for Memphis, absolutely.
I took a look at their win shares per 48 minutes for both Gasol and Iguodala, and I was actually surprised to see that Iguodala is at .186. That's almost a full win share above average, and Gasol, while still a very good number, was only at 0.163. They both make an impact on the court when they're playing. You're absolutely right. But I think you're right about Golden State because they have Barnes to be able to back up Iguodala. Their bench is going to be a little bit shortened as a result of it, but the way that they're able to shoot, the way that they can keep themselves in games, I think that's a big win for Golden State. And you hope that Iguodala can come back after X amount of time and still be able to plug right in. But Koufos is a major downgrade over Gasol. There's no way of getting around it.
Absolutely. And the hamstring is an issue because those things can linger for the whole season. And I mean, bringing to my mind, Chris Kaman was doing really great for the Clippers a few years ago and hurt his hamstring, and then he almost never recovered from that. So that's a real issue they have to take care of and really make sure they get enough rest. And I suspect that with Harrison Barnes being able to fill that role, they don't need to rush him back anytime soon.
We continue here on the starting five as we move to the man in the middle, and that's Portland continuing to streak. They've won 10 games in a row. It looked like it was in jeopardy Friday night against the Bulls, and then all of a sudden that awful third quarter for Chicago rolled around, and it really crushed them. The second half has been a theme for the Trailblazers. They've been down in 3 of the last 4 games in the first half, had really strong second halves. It's the team's best winning streak in 6 years, and they host the Knicks on Monday night, so you think that it'll probably continue. But how much longer do you think the Trailblazers can keep this streak going?
You know what? It could happen against the Knicks. Every game you win, you're just that much more likely to lose the next game. It's just, how it works. So, they've been playing with fire without question. They've been overcoming a lot of issues with some really good three-point shooting, which will clearly not maintain for the whole season. So it's been a great surprise. We are another plug because we are going to do a real big focus on the Blazers this week, kind of like what we did with the Knicks from last week. So we will really get into detail what's happening there, but certainly, the three-point shooting has been something that's really helped them stay in these games.
I think they're in good shape for their next 3 games. They host the Knicks on Monday night. They're at the Suns on Wednesday, and then they got a whole 4 days until Sunday's game when they're on the road against the Lakers. So I think those 3, they should be okay. But really tough over the next week when they host Indiana on Monday and they host Oklahoma City the following Wednesday. That's going to be tough. And you have to remember, Coach, the last 10 games that they've played, the winning percentage of teams they've been playing is .415. So lower than the pack. But listen, this is a team that's really surprised me and surprised a lot of people this year.
They have had some quality wins in there, though, so it's not like they've been completely beating teams that are worse than them. So they have something there. Remember, they've got a premier big man in LaMarcus Aldridge. They have a premier point guard in Damian Lillard. They have a good defensive player in Batum who's, is up and down offensively. And then Wes Matthews is just out of his mind right now shooting. So they have a nice pieces. And remember, C.J. McCollum will come back, I think, at some point and really help that bench with Lopez coming off. So, they have some pieces in there, and this is a great way to start to get them to mesh together. And, look at the Nets. They're doing so poorly, and they're all falling apart with the way they're behaving toward each other. So at least with Portland, they're developing that chemistry right now that's so vital to a young team.
Well, that's a nice little transition into our next team here on the starting five. The Nets have lost 5 straight. Kevin Garnett talking after the game, saying everyone here is embarrassed. They're 3-10 after the home loss to the Pistons on Sunday. Jason Kidd has management backing. He seems to be like he's okay, but at some point you have to ask the question, can Brooklyn and this team with this age and the injuries that they have, can they turn themselves around?
Oh, no, wait. Did Jason Kidd get the dreaded, we support our coach 100%?
That's right.
Oh, God. Well, you know what that means. This is basically a how not to build a team and run a team. Hire a coach that never coached before. Bring in aging guys who are already past what the end of their career probably would have been. It is a mess, and everyone's saying the wrong things in the press. I mean, even from the last week when Jason Kidd was saying, I'm going to stand up more during the games because I want people to know that I'm coaching. I don't even know what that means. And now all the way through what Kevin Garnett had said. So, yeah, it's a really big mess. There isn't a lot of end in sight because these injuries are really crippling them. So is it really fair to criticize Jason Kidd, for instance, for not having 4 of his top 8 players for most of the season? Probably not. I don't think. I think Mike Brown might commiserate with him from the Lakers experience. So it's a real problem, and I don't know if there's an end in sight.
Right. Well, the good news is that they're in an awful division. So even if they get something turned around in the second half, they still have a chance. But if you look at their numbers right now, particularly on both defensive efficiency and offensive efficiency, they're terrible. 29th in defensive efficiency, 24th in offensive efficiency. We talked about how everybody is hurt. And like I said before, the only reason they shouldn't freak out yet is because nobody in the division is really doing anything. The Knicks have been a major disappointment as well. They've had injuries. So at some point, we saw Boston turn it around a little bit last year. And I'm not saying that this is the same exact team, but maybe you look to them and say, okay, there's too many good players on this team for them to not get to a point where they're not contending for a final spot, for at least a playoff spot. I think they'll be okay, but they're still a major disappointment to me. And our final one on the starting five today, Coach, Kobe Bryant. This is actually a bit of breaking news. He signs a 2-year extension with the Lakers. He's going to likely end his career with Los Angeles. The deal is for a 35-year-old Bryant, and he's probably going to be the highest paid player remaining in the league. Mike Bresnahan is reporting that it's going to be about $40 and $50 million over his final 2 seasons. I guess your overall thoughts on Kobe remaining a Laker for the final 2 years?
I mean, it was a no-brainer. We knew he was going to finish his career with the Lakers, and they were going to pay him, close to what he would want or what they could afford. It certainly cripples them to some degree because it's a huge contract that's going to make it harder to bring other people in. What I'm more concerned with is after the Dwight Howard debacle last year and how that interaction, and people aren't going to, you don't have to defend Dwight at all, but I do think that it might cause a bit of a tainted waters over here in the Lakers camp as far as any other big star wanting to come and play with him because it didn't go so well. So that's a real big concern, but it was not even a question because they were going to sign him and he was going to stay here.
Right. And it's still a ton of money. And really, if you're any team that's not the Lakers or the Knicks or the Nets, that really, plays a major role, but it doesn't for them. Are they a playoff team when he comes back? I'm not sure. I just don't know if there's enough talent around him for them to make a difference. They're playing better defense over the last few games, got them right back to 500. But listen, Kobe can still play. And I think we'll get a chance to see that when he fully recovers. I mean, he's still, since 2007, he's hovering around a 23 per. So it's not a slouch anymore. He's still going to earn his paycheck. It's just sort of a question of, as you said, is there going to be another legitimate superstar willing to play with him? I think by the time things are said and done, when they clear out a lot more space, I think they're going to be able to bring somebody in because at the end of the day, cash sells.
That is true, and the name you keep hearing is Melo. I don't know how Melo and Kobe would work together at all.
That would be something.
But that could be a mess. But we'll see. I think that Lakers fans are probably, if they're expecting a championship in the next 3 years, they're going to have to probably put those hopes away for a little while longer because I don't know how they're going to be able to make that happen that quickly.
It was a little bit surprising that they announced it today. I would have thought maybe at the end of the season they would have had those conversations, but good for the Lakers, good for Kobe to get it done, and hopefully it'll be fun to see one of the all-time greats play in one uniform throughout his whole career. There you go. That's the starting five. He's Coach Nick. I'm Ben. We'll do it again next week. Talk to you soon.